Well, good morning. Thank you all for being here. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I know we've got several out this weekend, or this, I don't know why we call it the weekend. It's the first day of the week, but they're still traveling. So we need to remember them in our prayers. The group from Praise and Harmony, they're gone. When are they coming back? Do you know? Be back tomorrow. Okay. Is there about 7 of them gone? 7? Yeah, Mark Boykin, I know, is there. Okay. Grind, yeah. Jan and yep. Jill and Stan, not Jan. Sorry. It's been a rough morning. Okay. Well, I'm going to put a little plug in for something that me and Sarah went to last weekend. I appreciate David Epler for teaching the class last week. We went to the Red River Family Encampment in Red River, New Mexico. Me and Sarah and John and Jessica and of course our children went with us, and really good. It's if y'all ever want to go where it's a little bit cooler, it was still windy. It was really windy for a few days that we were there, but saw lots of people, met lots of new people, saw a bunch of old friends, and it's kind of like if you've ever had to do any kind of like continuing education for something, you kind of get to go up there and you get to learn more things, okay? Sometimes it's new, sometimes it's a different way of thinking about things, but you get to hear some really good speakers, really powerful preachers. And let me tell you, we're blessed to have the ones we have here. I think that either one of ours could be invited up there and do a fantastic job. But anyway, they do it every, I think it's the 4th, is it the 4th June? Yeah, it's the 4th week of June, Red River, New Mexico. And they've been doing it since 1987. Had about 1,500 people in attendance there, so it's really, really good. You're in this tent, massive tent. They call it the tent of meeting. But anyway, good singing, good speakers, and you get to choose the topics that you want to go to. If you want to go see a certain or listen to a certain speaker, you can go to his classes. So anyway, just a really good experience. I'd recommend anyone wants to plan next year to consider that. So as we get started here, we're not going to go over what we've already gone over, but just to kind of refresh a little bit, we're using John 3:16 as kind of our narrative arc through the entire Bible, and we're going to talk about something today that sometimes maybe we don't focus on as much, or we think that doesn't really pertain to us that much, so we just don't spend a lot of time with it. And I'll be honest with you, that's kind of how I have felt over my Christian life sometimes. But there's a lot of rich material here, and it's the very first class. I kind of asked, well, why do we read the Bible, or what do we do when we read the Bible? And a lot of times it's to see what we can get out of it, right? It's to find a personal struggle, some way to help ourselves with something. Sometimes we want the do's and the don'ts. It's okay to do this. It's not okay to do this, and we use it also to maybe support why we do something. And all those aren't bad reasons. But I think if we don't understand what the Bible is, that it is truly God's story given to us so that we can know and learn God's will for us. And it tells us who God is. So I don't ever want to skim past that and understand that. I feel like that needs to be a core part of why we read the Bible. It's to learn about God's love for us, learn the story of God. And the book we're following is called The Story of Glory. So hopefully we're all going to have a better appreciation not only for this verse, but also all the words in it and all the words in our Bibles. Start off with God. It's got to start there. That's the first thing. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God. It's got to start there. He loved so much that the creation flowed from His love, and that was the world, the object of God's love and His mission. Today we're going to talk about God's Son. Okay? We're not going to talk about Jesus today. We're going to hold that for next week. But God had a plan, and God calls someone and a group of people his firstborn son. So we're going to talk about that today. It's the plan of God through the nation of Israel. So, God's firstborn son. You know, if we think about that, we think, well, it's obviously Jesus, right? And you're not wrong to think that necessarily. But the Bible tells a little different story, and because we're going to use, there's a lot of Bible verses here. We won't go over all of them, but I certainly want to point these out and understand why we're talking about this. Exodus 4:22 says, "Then you shall say to Pharaoh, Thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son." Okay. It's repeated again by the prophet Hosea. It says, When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. So, when we think about Israel as a nation, God refers to Israel as his firstborn son. We're going to talk about this. God's plan, it involved blessing a simple man, turning him into a nation that would reflect his glory to the other nations. But instead of living as God's loyal son, Israel chose other gods and walked away from their mission. So let's remember the story of God's firstborn son. All right. So where's the story going? 2 weeks ago, what's his bonus points? Does anyone remember what we talked about 2 weeks ago? All right, we'll get there. So the nations were scattered. Okay, we're talking about the Tower of Babel. Okay, this is after the flood. This is after Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives started to repopulate the earth as God intended them to do. Because God, number one, why did God destroy everything in the earth with the flood? Sin? Yeah, because everything was evil. Everything was evil. Every thought of man was evil. So God did something. He destroyed not everything, but he caused the flood. He saved those eight people and all the animals in the ark. So, and after that, this is part of the story. Okay, this is part of the story. Then, just a few chapters later, in the book of Genesis, we read about the Tower of Babel. We don't talk a whole lot about Babel. Historians say, where do you all think the Tower of Babel was? There's a famous city, a famous group of people that we talk about all the time. That Babylon, yeah, Babylon. So the Tower of Babel, God just said, we all just Babylon. Okay, so that's what I think he did anyway. I don't know. You won't find that in the Bible probably, but where was the Tower of Babel? We're going to look at a map. In fact, I may just we'll stay in the story here. We'll get to a map here in just a minute. So the Tower of Babel happened, and they built this. It probably wasn't a spiral tower straight up to the sky. It was almost like it could have been like a pyramid with a staircase going up to it, up to a flat top. And remember that wasn't necessarily for, in that time of Mesopotamia, in that area, that wasn't a time for people to go up to the gods. Historians would say that was something for the gods to come down from heaven, okay, and join man. So that's why they built the tower, and they wanted to make a name for themselves. That's why the people did that, to show how great they were and how they could build this huge structure. Okay, to say, look at us, we're powerful. Don't come mess with us. Okay, so when God confused their language, He spread them over the earth. and he actually, it's kind of a strange concept, but he actually assigned different gods to those scattered people. And we'll look at some verses that indicate that. So the story could have been over. God could have just said, you know what? I can't destroy you again because I promised with the bow in the sky that I'm not going to flood the earth again. He could have just sat back and just watched humanity destroy itself, possibly, continue to walk in the ways of sin. But God said, no, I created you for a reason. You're a human. You are my image bearer, and I'm not going to tolerate that. So, Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, it says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when He divided mankind, He fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. I'm not ready to get into this completely. This is a conversation you'll have to have with God when you get there. But the sons of God, some translations will translate that to the heavenly hosts, okay, or the heavenly council, all right, instead of the sons of God. And that's where we kind of get the idea that maybe He did put lesser gods over different groups of people, okay? So just think about all the Perizzites, the Hittites, all the different people of the land of Canaan, and all the different gods that they served. They thought that Marduk was the god that they were building the Tower of Babel to, Marduk. I think Troy might have even mentioned that back here a few weeks ago in one of his sermons. So, but Marduk was a god that they were serving. I'm going to show you on a map. Nancy, I'm glad you asked that. Yeah. I'm going to show you that. So, the key verse is not verse 8, it's verse 9. Deuteronomy 32, verse 9 says, but the Lord's portion is His people, Jacob His allotted heritage. Now, Deuteronomy was like the second telling of the law. Okay, this is after Exodus. This is everything. This has all been Moses is attributed to writing this, given from God, obviously, but this is his writing to the people. Deuteronomy chapter 32, I think some people call it Moses' song. It's a retelling of the history, okay? So we've got to understand the power of stories. And when we say stories, it's not like fairy tale stories. These are accounts, biblical accounts of what happened, historical accounts, not just something it's not fiction. Okay. So Moses is retelling in Deuteronomy 32 everything that God did for His people. We'll talk about more of that later. So at Babel, humanity was united in one thing, and it was rebellion. They wanted to make their own name great, serve gods that they preferred, and build a world on their own terms. So God let them have what they wanted, scattering them and handing them over to gods that they desired. But the story wasn't over. God chose a portion for Himself. All right. I love maps. Is my cursor showing up there? It's not. Well, it's on my screen. Okay. So, everyone can see Egypt, right? In the lower left corner there. Do you see Jerusalem? Oops. Go back there. Jerusalem is right there. I know it's a little bit small. You see the Dead Sea right next to Jerusalem, and then the Sea of Galilee. It's so small you can't even see it, but it's up north. It's up higher above Jerusalem. Of course, Jerusalem, the name is over on the other side of the sea. The little red dot is where Jerusalem actually is, right there. I kind of put this on here because it shows Babylon, and we're going to talk about a man named Abraham. Those is extra bonus points. Does anyone remember where Abram's family came from? Yeah. See how close it is to Babylon? Just a wee little ways away right there. So, it's whenever that's where Babylon. We think the scholars think that's where the Tower of Babel probably was, and that's why it's called Babylon. And then you can see this encompasses, probably 99% of all biblical accounts occur right on this map right here. Now, the maps change based on the era that we're looking at. This is about 600 BC is this map here. I believe Abraham, historians date him to about 2100 BC, okay? So, because they know that, because there was a famine in Egypt, in the area around 2086 BC. And that's one of the reasons Abram's family went to Egypt, was because of the famine in the land. So, anyway, of course, you see Susa right there. That's part of the Persian Empire. All right, so we're in like modern day Iraq, Iran. George, help me out here. My geography now is a little bit fuzzy, but is that most of this map here is like Iraq and Iran, Saudi Arabia. You've got Egypt over here on the left. This is South Africa here. UAE. Well, right. Yeah, you got the Tigris and Euphrates. Yeah. Everything that we have biblical accounts of, this is pretty much it. So you got the Persian Gulf. We still call it the Persian Gulf here, down in the lower right-hand side. So what are modern day things? I think some of these names have changed, of course. But Susa, who do we talk about when we talk about Susa over there on the middle right side there? Yeah. Jonah, there, Nineveh, sure, but Susa was the citadel or the capital of Persia. There's a woman that we talked quite a bit about, Esther. That's where all that happened at. Yes, yeah. So this is all Middle East territories now. Okay, what we would consider now the Middle East. So lots of rich history there. So okay, I just wanted to show you all Babylon and and just kind of get a picture of kind of where everything was. This is the Red Sea. The Red Sea is where the Israelites crossed over. God split the water, escaping Egypt. Okay, went through the Red Sea. They wandered in the desert. All right, this is like the Negev desert here. So anyway, just it's all right here. It's all right here. Okay, so God chooses Abram. Okay, God chooses Abram. When we think about this, it's kind of an odd man for God to choose, because there was a very powerful man named Nimrod. And we won't have time to turn to all these verses, but Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 through 12 talks about a powerful warrior that was God-fearing named Nimrod, but he didn't choose him. God chose Abram. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, from and your kindred, and your father's house, to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who honors you, or him who dishonors you, I will curse. And you and all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram is he's really nothing special. He was actually from a family of idol worshippers. We learn that in Joshua chapter 24, verse 2. And even more strange, he married a barren woman. Romans 4:19 talks about this. And why would God choose him? Have you ever thought about that? Why would God choose him? Just something to think about. Okay, I did put this in here. So anyway, instead of grasping for greatness, God would make his name great, not by worldly standards of power and conquest, but by blessing all the nations. This is almost like, have any of you all seen Lord of the Rings? Got this little hobbit named Frodo that he finds this ring, and it's all up to him to get this ring and destroy it before it destroys him. And Middle Earth, the fate of Middle Earth rests on this little hobbit and his little friends to do that. So it's kind of the same, so many stories that we think of in the world actually mimic the greatest story ever told of the Bible. So anyway, this side note here, Deuteronomy 32, and I think it's called Moses' Song, and then Joshua 24, these are accounts of retellings of Israel's history. Okay? They're retelling. And just like those people in that day would retell the story, we need to get comfortable with telling the story today of not only our story, but the story that God gave us. Okay. Let's see. Yep. So, again, this is God telling Abraham. God changes his name from Abram to Abraham after he went to Egypt. Abraham is to become a great and powerful nation. All the nations of earth will be blessed through him, for I have chosen him, so that he will command his children and his house after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. This is how the Lord will fulfill to Abraham what he promised him. So what was Abraham supposed to do? Command his children and all of his house after him to keep the way of the Lord. Okay? Yahweh God, Yahweh, the God of the Israelites. And God chose Abraham to create a community that reflects God's character, which is righteousness and justice to the surrounding nations. Okay? Because remember, those other nations serve other gods, right? They don't serve Yahweh. They serve other gods. So God's going to use Abraham and bless his family to bless all the nations. And he did that to show the nations who the true God truly was. Go. Right. Yeah. Yeah. God knew Abraham, and that's why he chose him. If Nimrod was chosen, well, he's a great, mighty warrior, and who's going to get the credit? Nimrod would get the credit, absolutely. And God didn't want to come in here with force and might. He wanted to do it a different way, through righteousness and justice. Absolutely. Okay. So how do God's people show his glory to the world? God instructs the Israelites. This is at Mount Sinai. Exodus 19, 4 through 6. It says, "You will be my kingdom of priests and a holy nation." A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That holy nation, the holy, that kadosh or Kadesh means set apart. Okay? Set apart. You're going to be different. You're going to look different than everybody else. And just as priests stand between God and the people, Israel was to stand between God and the nations, representing His glory to the world and bringing the world's praise to Him, to God. Israel was God's treasured possession, set apart for God for the sake of the world. Again, Deuteronomy, the second telling of the law, is another reminder. Moses has to remind the Israelites, remember this. Remember, you all took this oath. Now, by the time a lot of their parents had already died off because they were wandering in the wilderness, but Moses reminds the Israelites of the covenant that this nation, that God made with the nation of Israel. He's reminding them of the covenant. It says in Deuteronomy 4:4-8, it says, "But you who held fast to the Lord your God are all alive today." Remember, that's the people that were wandering in the desert. A lot of them had died off already. Okay? "But see, I have taught you statutes and rules as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do them in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. Keep them and do them, for that will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who, when they hear all these statutes, will say, 'Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people.' For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us, whenever we call upon Him? And that great nation, and what great nation is there that has statutes and rules so righteous as to all this law that I set before you today?" So God's wanting His people, His covenant people, to act a certain way so that it's apparent to all the other nations, like, wow, these people serve an awesome God. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Abram didn't have a home. He followed God. Okay? God didn't want Abram to set up in a home or build cities. They had tents and they were nomadic. So he went to Egypt. That's where, if I'm remembering the story right, and I should know this better probably, Abraham had to tell Sarah, say, "Hey, act like I'm your brother," okay? Because it's a fascinating story, and if we had time, we would read about 3 chapters of Genesis. But Genesis, I think it's 11, 12, 13, talks about a lot of that right there. So, because yes, this is after all that. Yep. Deuteronomy is after the Exodus. It's after the 400 years of slavery. This is after Jacob and Esau. This is after Joseph. This is after it's after all that. Yes. Yep. But Moses is reminding the people of the covenant that God made with their family members. Okay? That's what this is about. Yeah. Abraham is dead and gone several hundred years before this ever happened. Absolutely. Did that answer your question? Sorry. Okay. Yep. So, there's covenants with Israel. It starts with a covenant with Abraham, and it indicates God's mission. Let's see, there was something I was supposed to do back here. Well, maybe not. Sorry. Okay. So Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3. We've read this before. It says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, Go forth from your country and from your relatives, from your father's house, to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed." It's partnership. Okay? God chooses Abraham to partner with him in spreading the goodness to all humanity. And this is a launching pad, all right? So we have to think about it that way. It's a launching pad for God's global mission. Genesis chapter 18 and 19, it says, "Abraham is to become a great and powerful nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him, so that he will command his children and his house after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. This is how the Lord will fulfill to Abraham what he promised him." So that's the first covenant with Israel. The next one with Israel is God's presence. Okay? Israel was enslaved in Egypt. At Mount Sinai, after the Exodus, or right at the start of the Exodus, Exodus 19, verse 4 through 6, we've already read this, but God's telling this nation that you will be my treasured possession. I will make you a holy nation. And God binds them as his son. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22 and 23. It says, "Then you shall say to Pharaoh, Thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I said to you, Let my son go, that he may serve me. But you have refused to let him go. Behold, I will kill your son, your firstborn." I know we're kind of going back and forth here some, but because Mount Sinai is after all of the plagues and everything like that. But God has already bound them as his son. God talks about Israel as his bride in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 2. We won't turn there, but you certainly can. And his people, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 6 through 9. God's making promises, he's making covenants with this group of people. And these are not cold contracts. Okay? This is intimacy with God. God is going to live amongst his people. Exodus 25, verse 8. It says, "Let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I am going to show you as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all of its furniture, just so you shall construct it." So where did God live with his people of Israel during the Exodus? In the tabernacle. Yeah, in the Ark of the Covenant, where God went with them in the ark, sure. But God said, "Build me a tabernacle." And God would dwell with them. God would dwell with them. So Israel, this nation of Israel, wasn't being rescued from something, okay? They were being rescued for something. They were rescued to show the nations what life with true God looked like. Again, Deuteronomy chapter 26, verses 16 through 19. Moving on through the nation of Israel to David. Okay? Israel would eventually have kings. Of course, it was against God's advice, and we've talked about kind of this, what we sometimes call the sin cycle, where this nation disobeys God. God raises up judges, go through all that. Then they finally say, hey, we want a king. We want to be like what? Everybody else. Everyone else has a king. We want a king. Why did that upset God? Who was supposed to be their king? God. Yahweh, God. Yeah. Who's supposed to be our king today? God. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. Some of us want to be like everybody else. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so God made a covenant with David. Said that his throne would endure forever, that God would be a father to his son, and that his faithful love, that Hesed, that we talked about a few weeks ago, would never be removed. And those verses are there. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16, and 1 Chronicles 17, 11 through 14. And even if David's heirs were disobedient, God would not abandon the covenant, because God's covenants are not like man's covenants, right? God's covenants are binding. God is faithful to keep His commandments. So an Israelite king from the line of David would one day reign with justice and peace over God's people. And this was preached, it was proclaimed through the prophet Isaiah, Jeremiah, and this is the Isaiah chapter 9 here. It says, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. This promise, this Israelite nation held on to that promise all through Babylonian captivity. That was a cornerstone of Israel's hope for the future, because we all know eventually, well, we'll get to that in just a minute, sorry. Okay, the next, and these four covenants are kind of like the spine of the Bible. It kind of goes through the entire thing here. Moses warned that Israel would one day break the covenant and suffer consequences. And of course, they did. I'm going to turn to 2 Kings chapter 17 real quick and look at that. 2 Kings 17. I won't read all this here, but the title in my Bible, this little verse here, it says, Why Israel Fell. Now this came because of the sons of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up from the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And they feared other gods, and walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord had driven out before the sons of Israel, and in the customs of the kings of Israel, which they had introduced. The sons of Israel did things secretly which were not right against the Lord their God. Moreover, they built for themselves high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. They set for themselves sacred pillars and Asherim on every high hill and under every green tree, and that they burned incense on all the high places, as the nations did, which the Lord had carried away to exile before them. And they did evil things, provoking the Lord. They served idols, concerning which the Lord had said to them, You shall not do this thing. Yet the Lord warned Israel and Judah through all his prophets and every seer, saying, Turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments, my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers. Remember that promise to Abraham. And which I sent to you through my servants, the prophets. So that's why this was a people that eventually turned away from God and served other gods. But even in exile, the prophets spoke of this hope that was coming. Okay? A new covenant. His law written on hearts and forgiving sins. Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 31, verse 31 through 34, talks of a new covenant. Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. My covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. But this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. They will not teach again, each man his neighbor and each man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. God says a new covenant's coming. He promises a new heart, a new spirit. We won't read Ezekiel 36. Actually, I will. I turned right to it. So let's do that now. Ezekiel 36, verses 24 through 28. Ezekiel 36, 24 through 28. It says, For I will take you from the nations, gather you from all the lands, and bring you into your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your filthiness and from all your idols. Moreover, I will give you a new heart, and put a new spirit within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will be careful to observe my ordinances. You will live in the land that I gave to your forefathers, so you will be my people, and I will be your God. So God promises a new heart, a new spirit. The problem never was with God's covenants. The problem was the people's unfaithfulness. God wanted to change them from the inside out. The central drama that God's people have to deal with is in Deuteronomy 28 through 30. They had two choices, the same two choices for us today. Obedience would lead to overflowing blessings, abundant harvest, peace, victory over their enemies, and honor among other nations. Or disobedience, devastating curses, famine, defeat, disgrace, and exile. Israel's choice was more than just their own well-being. The choice to follow God or not would show the nations what kind of God He is. Their faithfulness would reveal God's glory and character to the world. Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. Choose life or death, blessing or curse. And the big question, are our choices any different today? Israel's tragedy was sin. We talked about it a few weeks ago. I like this understanding of what sin is. It's service to an idol, and it negates God's image. You can look at any sin listed in the Bible, and I think that this definition fits it pretty good. Israel turned to idols, exchanged the glory of the image to an image of a grass-eating ox, Psalms 106. God's firstborn was meant to bring light, but stumbled into darkness. God's promise to Abraham was not abandoned. God's commitment to his covenant and glory did not waver. God knew that more was to come. God's restoration of Israel pointed forward to the ultimate restoration in the coming Messiah, who would fulfill the covenant promises and truly embody God's glory for all nations. And then the thing, how far would God go to fulfill his promises? And you know the answer. It's Jesus. Let's go to God in prayer. Father God, we thank you for this story that's been saved for us. Lord, thank you for your ancient people, for the stories that have been preserved for us. And Lord, we know that they are there for a reason, to show your faithful love and your commitment to a people that show your glory to the world. Lord, I pray that we are all those people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, next week we're going to talk about